So tonight I was just perusing on Urkel, and I saw that this was added. So there's a couple of things about this ship that a lot of you in the community need to be aware of before you fucking buy it. All right. So I'm just gonna lay out a couple of things. Personally, I would not buy this ship, but I'm gonna just provide y'all the information, and y'all can decide for yourselves if you want to approach this, right? So the first thing that I'm going to point out about this new RSI ship are the new cannons. They're size fives. On paper it's like, oh wow, that's a pretty good damage, right? So when you look at the speed of the weapon, right, 840. That is slow as fuck, boys. In fact, I think that's the slowest weapon in the game, or one of the slowest weapons in the game. So it sits right there with the Deadbolt 5, right? And then whatever the hell this fucking stupid shit is right here, shotguns in space. We're never going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about the speed here, which is 840, right? So if you wanted to use this weapon, right? So we're going to have to look at our options here, right? So as you can see, your your only really viable option are Deadbolt 3s, right? And we're just gonna look to see what the on paper shit is, because that's what y'all read the most, not actually caring. So when you look at those numbers on paper, you're probably just saying to yourself, "Wow, that's a lot of damage, right?" Yeah, it depends on what you're applying it to, right? So like if you're trying to use this ship to kill a bigger ship, right? That's kind of like what you want to see, right? So it's not really designed to be a fighter, all right? And I'm just gonna go ahead and put that out there right now. So when you look at the pitch and the yaw and the roll on it, even while boosted, right? It's trash, right? I mean, this is debatably worse than in any other heavy fighter in the game, right? I don't have anything to compare it up to right now. I mean, I could compare it up to the Mark II, right? Hornet. So you got 50, 40, 143, right? And then you have 46, 38, 155, right? So basically, the only thing this ship does is roll better, which really doesn't make sense for its profile. But the main thing I want to point out here is that that's its rotation value. So when you're going up against fighters, this is not a viable choice. Not by any stretch of the imagination, right? So let's say you actually want to try to dogfight in this ship because you've got something to prove, or you want to prove me wrong, right? So let's go down that thought process here, right? So what size 5 weapons do we have to replace with these other size 5 weapons, right? So now we're gonna enter in glaive territory, all right? Like that horrible place that none of you want to talk about or acknowledge. So what here has the speed at the size to be a viable dogfighter? Well, you're gonna go with Galadriels because cannons suck. All right, that's what you're gonna do. So that forces you into a repeater loadout. So you can't even you don't even have a weapon to mix neutrons with on this fucking ship, right? So it's like, welcome to the glaive life, where there's like the size 5 weapon class is fucking dog shit. And as you can see, that's your new, if you want to try to be a dog fighter in this ship, like God help you if you do, right? So let's y'all can do your own missiles, right? But we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna show y'all what I consider to be the air quote meta, right? So you have this component right here, right? Which essentially gives you 16 power. It's not as good as a JS or a Quadracell, but at the same time, military components need to have some value. So you're going to go with aluminum core if you don't have a Class A power plant on hand, which, let's be real, most of you don't. So now that we're going to get into this, so you have two options, right? So you can go with the Palisades, right? You know, but you're going to have limited power. So what do you do to fix this? So you go over here to your coolers, right? And you're going to want to go for, got it, but the snowblind, but if not, you want the vapor block. Now, as you can see, the power is starting to normalize out, right? So you're just going to be down 1 on engines or whatever. But if you want max shields on this thing, you're going to want the Palisades, right? Let's say you don't want Palisades, right? Say you don't want that. Then go with the Concords. And what this will do is it'll give you extra power block with full power at the cost of around, 1,000 or so shields. And still, even with all of this meta, dogfighter jargon I'm throwing on you right now, end of the fucking day, boys, this is the only metric that you need to care about when you literally start looking at buying a new ship. And this is why I get so mad at CIG when they do their toxic behavior of nerfing these values to, heavily encourage, air quote, you to swipe your credit card for something new, right? The MOBA dogfighting model, right? So anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that the rotation values on this ship, the Hornet is just slightly better, right? Now, just to see if I haven't been done so much research in this, is it a medium fighter? Is it a heavy fighter? What are we classifying this as, boys? We're classifying this as a medium fucking fighter? Are you serious? So if we're gonna classify this as a medium fighter, right? The thought process here is that, because it has, bigger gun ports, it has a slower rotation value. But this has dominant roll compared to the Hornet, but with the other rotation values, that roll doesn't really matter. Because if a Hornet can out-rotate you even while rolling, then you're fucked, right? Like, the Hornet's going to get on top of you, and that forces you into a rate fight, correct? So let's look at the SCM speed, right, which is 229, and the boost is 570, right? Backwards 235. Let's look at the so it's faster. That's the only thing it has going for it. So basically you would want to rate fight with a Meteor. Like, rotation battles against fighters are not viable in this ship, right? Here comes the neat part. Let me introduce you to the Glaive, right? Let me introduce you to my personal loadout for a ship that has locked in place size 5 cannons that cannot be replaced, okay? They are locked in. You cannot do fuck all with them, okay? And they fire at basically the same speed as a deadbolt, all right? So basically, when you look at this, right, it has pitch, y'all, what I'm saying? And we go back to and then we go back over here, and we see that the Glaive actually has the exact same modifier or the exact same roll. We see that the Glaive has better pitch and the Glaive has better yaw. So that means, like I said, its speed here is what matters, right? So again, these are the metrics you need to be looking at, boys and girls. All right, like not so much the how much does it do damage on paper metric. You need to be looking at what you can do against other fighters. And ladies and gentlemen, the RSI Meteor is a runner. It is not a dog fighter, not by the stretch of the imagination. And essentially everybody and its mom is going to out-rotate it. So that locks you into a play style, right? So this is CIG's way of like making rolls for ships, right? But at the same time, um, just because you're able to disengage a little bit better doesn't mean that you'll be able to keep the target, right? So here comes the weakness, right? So you see the backwards, the back strafe here. So this is what a lot of people fall back on, especially when they're trying to, keep their nose on, faster targets with more rotation, which is why you see the light fighter mafia bitch so much about it, because it's the only fucking way to deal with them is the back strafe, right? And as you can see, the F7A has better back strafe, and the glaive doesn't have is right there, but just shy, right? So there are things about the Hornet that make it better than the glaive, and it's only because of the speed variation, right? Being able to control the fight is much more valuable than being able to apply high numbers of damage on in your head, right? You know, so basically they didn't completely nerf the Hornet into the ground. But this fucking thing has very limited use, right? See, at least a glaive, right, has the ability to turn on a light fighter, right? That's the difference. That's what I'm trying to point out here. Like you guys need to be looking at, like what medium fighter can turn on these little assholes in their gladiuses with auto aim, right? This ain't it. So anyway, that's my hot take on the Meteor. Thank you for coming to my tech talk, and just make informed purchases, right? And also keep in mind that even though I'm putting these numbers in your face right now, as I pointed out in the beginning of this video, CIG is going to change these metrics according to what the fuck they want to sell in their goddamn store, right? So, this is another reason why I don't make these videos, right? But when it comes to this fucking thing, I feel compelled to do so because I just simply don't fucking like this thing, right? I think this is a very poor way to try to bring, some type of human ship into the line that can compete with this more effectively. But at the same time, it's like, the Vandal ships have always been a little bit more powerful than the human ships, I must admit. But they do take a degree of skill that, well, at least in the Glaive's context, to fly and kill with, right? Not so much the Blade, right? Because the Blade here is a ship that's made during 2.0 pipeline and has all the bells and whistles that these newer ships have, right? Compared to its older brother here, the Tier 0 parent blueprint, right? And when you look at the blade, right? And this is what makes it super fucking funny, right? You see the blades DPS and alpha, right? See, Vandal ships are locked loadouts. You cannot change these weapons, okay? And the thing is when you look at, how fast it can go forward, how fast it can go backward, right? And of course its ability to apply damage. The blade completely and utterly dumpsters this fucking thing. And there's that's part of the disparity that players are complaining about, right? Light fighters are just fucking absolutely disgusting, right? It's hard enough to turn on these fucking things, right? And fight them, right? But when you look at everything I just taught you guys, right, with the rotation values, with the speeds, and then of course always looking at damage and an application of damage last, and of course the caveat of what you're trying to apply it to in your theory, correct? So again, when you look at this, which ship do you think has more battlefield versatility, right? And this isn't biased, boys. The Blade is clearly better. It has better alpha, it has better damage, it has better sustainable damage, it has better speed, it has better rotation values, it has everything better. This ship, you know, makes this look like a fucking joke. And I haven't even got into signature radiuses yet, right? You know, that's another thing, but we're not getting into stealth in this video. That's a completely different topic. But as you can see, there really is no contest between a light fighter and this thing, right? And then, of course, you take it a step further, you see that the F7A is better, right? And you can actually put on the Starburst loadout, which is what I call it, which is the Omnis and the neutron repeaters, right? But you know that's gonna put the alpha and the damage of this ship. Like I guess I can do it real fucking fast because I don't want to make this video like super long. Like it's already long enough as it is. Oh, it is the ball. So as you can see, when you put this loadout on, that's when it starts to actually, you know, it's like, oh, look at that. Now we've got a damage application that is just as good as the blade, right? But again, it depends on what you're fucking shooting at, right? You know, the blade is fast enough to compensate for the slow weapons, whereas the Hornet's too slow to compensate for its weapon velocities against a faster target, right? Hence why people use repeaters over this loadout, because again, when you start looking at the velocities of these weapons compared to the speeds of the ship in which you're flying, you're going to start to see what actually starts to, like, you know, depending on your skill level as a pilot, you're going to start to see, you know, what applies more damage efficiently, right? And that's what I'm trying to get at. Us in the top of the community, we look at the efficiency of how we can apply damage. And right now, based on what I'm seeing, the blade is the most efficient fighter right now to apply damage. And, you know, the Gladius doesn't come close to its damage application, right? So it's like there's a massive disparity between the way that some of these ships are made and tuned, right? So I don't know how much this fucking thing cost. But, you know, I'm going to go ahead and give this just a massive Renegade failure, right? This ship is not viable in dogfighting, and it's only viable at taking out constellations and above, right? Sorry, not sorry. You can haze me in the comments if you want. You can tell me how much of an asshole and a douche I am, all that crap, right? But, you know, that's just what it is, right? You know, you can hate me for my opinion on the ship, but the numbers here don't lie. And, you know, regardless of how much you hate me, my experience when it comes to this is just as much as a lot of theirs. And I am not recommending the RSI Meteor unless you just really like this ship for some weird fucking reason. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. You guys have a great night. Make sure you spend your money wisely in this game. You know, at least on the things you want, and make sure you want them for the right reasons, right? You know, that's just the best advice I can give at this point. When you buy something, buy it for more than just how it performs in the current patch. All right, Commander D out.